All right, let's call to order Town of Basalt Planning and Zoning Commission, Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026. Roll call, please.
All right. Bill Marin,
Yo.
Kyle Oberketter, Eric Vozick, Rob Levitt,
Here.
Cindy Hirschfield, Mike Horvath,
Here.
Bob Kaplan,
Here.
Ben Firestein.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All righty, thank you very much. First off, we have minutes, January 6th and January 20th. Does anyone have any comments, changes, or additions to any of those?
Motion to approve?
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have first, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, public hearing, 72 Sunset Drive PUD amendment, and that's a continuation to February 17th. How many more continuations do we got on that before it turns to a pumpkin?
Might have one or two. They're still working on building code revisions to make it comply so that they can go through the development process.
Okay,
Motion to continue?
we have a motion first to continue, second?
Second?
First and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Motion is continued, or item is continued. Continued public hearing, 555 Basalt Avenue Special Review. James.
Yes, thank you. We do have the applicants here this evening. We've got Justin Fries from Architecture Group representing the applicants, and we've got Marika Blodgett, who's the property owner. This is a continued public hearing on the application by MREH LLC, and it's a request for a special review, PUD amendments, Southside floodplain and associated land use actions to construct 54 commercial storage spaces and 48 multifamily residential units at 555 Basalt Avenue. It's the Myers and Company property in Southside. The process, as was discussed at the last meeting, includes land use requests requiring review by the Basalt Affordable Community Housing Commission, which is BAC, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and the Town Council, with public hearings at both the P&Z and council levels. And Ben, I didn't know, sorry, I jumped right in.
No, it's okay. I'm going to recuse myself here.
And staff has also identified that a requested master plan amendment is required in conjunction with the application because they need to amend the future land use map as well as the typology designations for the property. And as such, staff will be bringing back a resolution for consideration on the master plan amendments at the next meeting. At the last meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission heard a presentation of the proposal as well as discussion items from staff and the applicants. The commission took public comments and identified additional information that was requested by P&Z members, and then the hearing was continued to today's date. This meeting, staff would suggest hearing a refresher on the proposal, hearing updates on the additional materials provided by the applicants, as well as updates on the discussion items, as well as the draft conditions, and then taking public comments once again, and then at the end of the evening, staff would suggest continuing the public hearing once again to the next meeting to wait for the Basalt Affordable Community Housing Commission, BAC, to finish their review on the affordable housing items. So to begin as a refresher on the site is about 4.8 acres. It's located in Southside. It currently houses the Myers and Company steel project. It's located in the Basalt Business Center South PUD, and it's zoned industrial PUD. It's also within the urban growth boundary and partially in the South Side floodplain. The proposal, as was discussed at the last meeting, is to remove the existing buildings from the site and then construct 54 commercial storage units, storage spaces on the south half of the property, and then 48 residential units in 3 residential buildings on the north extent of the property adjacent to the Basalt Park and Ride. The access is proposed for the commercial storage from the south side on Fiu Lane, as you can see here. And then access to the residential is proposed from East Cody Lane on the north side of the project via this proposed driveway. As noted, there have been additional materials that have been provided by the applicant at the request of the Planning and Zoning Commission. These materials are in your packet. They include a construction management plan that was requested by the P&Z. The construction management plan shows access for the construction would take place from Fiu Lane and then exit onto East Cody Lane. Additional items that are included in your packet include a drawing of the access to Cody Lane, as well as the pedestrian connection that is proposed. The P&Z asked for a detail on this to see where the pedestrian connection could sync up with the existing network. And basically, it's proposed to go to the crosswalk across East Cody Lane in this location. Additional materials included the existing conditions on Fiu Lane, and there's a drawing in your packet that shows the existing conditions and widths as well that are included in that. And then the P&Z also requested revised elevation drawings that showed more visual interest. The applicant will present these updated renderings to the P&Z as part of their comments. In reviewing the application, staff identified a series of discussion items at the last meeting. And so staff will give some updates on these discussion items and identify how some of the draft conditions jive with those discussion items. The first being consistency with the master plan. As was discussed at the last meeting, it was noted that the future land use map has this property as existing land use. So it wasn't envisioned to be redeveloped during the life of the master plan. So that would require an amendment to the future land use map. And then in terms of the typologies, it is in the work mixed use typology. And the applicant has proposed to separate the residential from the commercial storage. And the work mixed use typology requires them to be kind of with each other and intermixed. And so that being the case, typology adjustment would be needed as well. So as staff noted, we'll bring back a resolution for consideration on the master plan amendments at the next meeting. Other topics included the level of affordable housing mitigation. The applicants proposed for 12 of the dwelling units to be deed restricted as category rental units that averaged a category 2. All of the deed restricted units were proposed to be 1 bedrooms in the original application, and the project proposed for 25% of the residential units and 25% of the residential square footage to be deed restricted. The Basalt Affordable Community Housing Commission, BAC, reviewed the application since the last P&Z meeting, and they recommended that the applicant incorporate some larger deed restricted units in the project. And the applicants have been working on an update to the application, and they will be going back to the Basalt Affordable Community Housing Commission to address their comments and motion before the next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Other topics included the requested waiver from the storage requirements in the community housing guidelines. As I noted, the applicants did not provide the storage units that are required by the guidelines. And so the Basalt Affordable Community Housing Commission reviewed the waiver request and were not supportive of the waiver request at their last meeting. So the applicants are working on addressing that, and they can talk about this further in their comments. So staff would suggest that the P&Z not go into the affordable housing items this evening and wait for Bach to finish up their recommendation before the next meeting. And so that will occur before the February 17th meeting. Other topics included compatibility of use. Storage use as well as the accessory residential use are allowed uses in the industrial zone district, with residential being a special review use that requires approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission and Town Council. As was noted at the last meeting, staff believes that it's important that the storage use remain storage and not become a business facility. And that being the case, staff has included draft conditions that you have in your packet. And in those draft conditions, it would prohibit the use as being a primary place for business, for individual businesses, and that it would have to remain storage. And so other topics included the building height. The applicant has proposed a building height of 38 foot to the top of the parapet. The Basalt Business Center South PUD requires a maximum height of 35 feet. It is being requested through a PUD amendment. Additionally, they've proposed the elevator overruns to go over the height limit as well. And so there are other buildings in the area, such as the 525 Basalt Avenue building, that have been granted amendments in height. As the site is a PUD, they can obtain amendments through the PUD, but it also opens up discussion as to whether the height amendment is justified given the level of public benefit of the project. And so that's up for evaluation. The applicants have revised the renderings and will present those as part of their comments. Pedestrian connectivity was another topic that was brought up for review. As the site is near the RAFTA BRT stop, the site has an opportunity to act as a transportation-oriented development. However, it requires a strong pedestrian connection to the BRT stop. Staff requested the applicant establish a pedestrian connection, and so the applicant explored the possibility of providing a pedestrian connection across the park and ride. RAFTA was not supportive of that concept and instead recommended that the pedestrian connection happen on the Up Valley side of the park and ride adjacent to the access drive from East Cody Lane. And so the applicant has provided a drawing that's in your packet of that pedestrian connection and how it crosses East Cody Lane at the crosswalk. There is a condition that staff has added requiring that this sidewalk connection be provided as part of the project. Other topics included Few Lane. As was discussed at the last meeting, Few Lane is on the south side of the proposed project, and it's located between the Myers project and the Southside 4 subdivision. It currently is two-way road that narrows down to the width of one lane at a couple of pinch points. The police department provided comments about consideration of it being given to being widened for a full 2 lanes of traffic in conjunction with the development. The applicant has proposed to keep it as it is, but have proposed a access path, pedestrian access path for firefighting abilities. Ultimately, this is a discussion of competing goals as there is considerable mature trees along this area. However, staff went back and discussed the concept of potential for one-way, and the emergency services and the town engineer, as well as Public Works, are still supportive of widening it to a full two-lane road in that area. And so there is a draft condition that would require it to be widened to 2 lanes, full 2 lanes as part of the development. So that's up for consideration and discussion. Other topics that were identified for consideration included the access road to East Cody Lane. As staff introduced at the last meeting, the access road to East Cody Lane is a sliver of property that's owned by CDOT, and currently the CDOT approvals only allow for 5 vehicular trips per day on that access. And so the applicant has made a request to CDOT to amend that. We are still waiting for CDOT's response to that, and so staff can give an update at the next meeting on that request. Other topics included the traffic, as provided in the traffic report and as was discussed at the last meeting. The traffic report indicates that development would not generate more traffic than the current Myers Steel operation, and that it wouldn't impact the Basalt Avenue Highway 82 intersection any more than the current Myers Steel operations. Staff had Charlier and Associates do a third-party review on the traffic study. His comments were included in this packet as well as the last packet. It's been identified as a concern that the site traffic generation was only based on 1 day of traffic count in May of 2025. And Charlier indicated that a broader review of the existing traffic should be considered. Charlier is supposed to be on virtually, and so he can answer questions and do a summary of his comments later on. Staff has proposed conditions of approval requiring that the applicant provide a contribution to the Basalt Avenue Cody Lane mini roundabout improvement that is identified as a short-term solution to build capacity at the intersection. And this is a requirement that has been provided for other developments in the south side. Other discussion items included the south side floodplain. The south side floodplain is partially on this property. The applicants worked with the town's contract hydrologist, who is Robert Crable of Matrix Design, on the site plan so that it could be developed without increasing the base flood elevation on the adjacent properties in the event of a flooding situation. They've done this by doing the tuck-under parking on the residential buildings so that water could flow through the site in a flooding event. Other topics included green building and wildfire mitigation. Staff has included a condition in the draft conditions for consideration that would require compliance with the sustainable building regulations as well as the wildfire mitigation requirements that are in place at the time of building permit. As was discussed with P&Z at the last meeting, the wildfire regulations are going to be updated. The state is requiring an update to the local municipalities' codes to comply with new state legislation that was passed about 3 or 4 months ago. So in total, this evening, staff would recommend that the applicant consider applicant comments, that the commission also consider comments on the traffic study from Jim Charlier. If he jumped on, I didn't see him on yet, but hopefully he jumps on. and then take public comments, provide commission discussion, and we would suggest holding off on the affordable housing related discussion until Bach has finished their review. As I noted, they made recommendations, and the applicant is in the process of responding to those recommendations. And then ultimately continue the public hearing to February 17th. And Jim Charlier has identified that he is on the call, and so he can provide a summary of his comments. Let me stop sharing my screen here. Hi, Jim. Would you like to provide a summary of your comments to the P&Z?
Sure, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'll do this quickly. I did this based on the traffic study, and I commented, my first comment is one that I think probably is of most interest to the board, was the effect that, is there an issue?
No.
No, we can hear you. Great.
Oh, I'm hearing an echo, so it's probably the speaker, yeah. So everything I say, I hear myself say 2 seconds later, it's no problem. The first one I had was that it based the current traffic estimate on 1-day traffic counts, which I think the board probably knows as discussed already, on May 21st. Ordinarily, we would want to see at least 3 days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, so you get a good weekday, heavy traffic weekday, and a weekend day. And ideally, you would have traffic counts for more than one season. So that was my first comment. We can add to that. I noted that they had not considered the likely presence of more than average amount of truck traffic, truck with trailer traffic in and around the current facility. That's not a particular issue for the application, because the reason I pointed it out is that traffic is probably more problematic in terms of congestion and crash rates and so forth than the kind of traffic that the new proposed project would generate. The third comment I had was just to note that the traffic study was done using the Institute of Traffic Engineers Traffic Generation Manual, which is a national document. That is updated frequently, but it's based on limited sample size, and almost all of the samples that are used in creating that traffic generation manual. So the traffic generation manual is a document that provides estimates of how many daily vehicle trips and how many peak-hour vehicle trips we generated by different kinds of development. And in this case, it's a part of the development under the IT terminology is a multifamily low-rise housing, and part of it is a mini warehouse. And I think those are the right categories, and that's what we want to do better. The issue is that the auto ownership rate in the Roaring Fork is higher than most national data, and trip generation rates tend to be a little higher in the Roaring Fork than they do in, say, suburban Kansas City or something like that. Again, I didn't think it was a big issue, but it was something that over time, I would think Basalt might want to begin developing some data of its own based on various studies that are done and various timing efforts that have been underway to supplement the national data when projects like this come in. My fourth comment was just to note that a lot of times when we see these, including some that I've reviewed for your town in the past, a lot of times when these traffic studies come in, the traffic engineer preparing the study is taking a large credit for what's called non-vehicular motion trips, so for walking, biking, transit uses. And that lowers the estimate of the traffic impact, and sometimes that's pretty problematic because it's an assumption, sometimes it's not based on adequate information, and sometimes it applies that somebody else is paying for something that is to the benefit of that project. However, in this case, they did not do that. And I just thought that was worth commenting. Again, it's not an issue, it was just a comment. I wanted to clarify that they had done a conservative forecast, and they had not taken into account the trip reductions that might be associated with, for example, the presence of the parking lot facility next door. And then I just noted as a general, one of the things that I imagine frustrates the board, but certainly frustrates me, is when we see a study like this and it doesn't really talk much about the real world situation on the ground. It just has all these numbers. And the corridors that serve this site also are used fairly significantly by the school traffic. And people coming to and from the school at some of the order lagging peak traffic periods. And so I had suggested that they, rather than look at the peak commute travel times in their definition of peak hour, that they can look at the peak commute times that relate to what's probably the actual peak at this location, which is when school is, either people are coming to the school or leaving the school. So I had suggested that in terms of the traffic study, that in terms of the traffic count data of the existing traffic, they could do a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then they shift the definition of peak hours to reflect the school peak hours. In the responses back, and I had other minor comments, but I think James has already summarized most of the topics, and you don't need to comment on. In the comments back, reply back from the traffic engineer, they agreed to shift the peak hour definition to reflect the school traffic, which is I think it's helpful that it doesn't really change any of our conclusions, obviously, because it doesn't change their traffic forecasts hardly at all. It just changes the background traffic, right? And they argued that it was unreasonable to request that they do more traffic counts to verify the accuracy of their estimate of the current traffic. And that was backed up later by a memo that was provided to me from the current landowner talking about their current business practice and indicating that there's not a lot of seasonal fluctuation and not a lot of fluctuation for days of the week, but their traffic is pretty steady throughout the working days of the week and Saturdays, and it doesn't really have much by season. So they felt it was unreasonable to ask them to do additional counts. James, what else do you need me to summarize at this point? Anything?
No, I think that's a good summary. If you could please hang on so that P&Z could ask some questions if they have them, that would be great. So now staff would suggest hearing from the applicants. He can provide responses as part of your comments, applicant comments.
Yeah, you guys drive what you want your team to present and not, so you guys are in charge, so. Just also for the general public, what's gonna happen right now is we're gonna have the applicant give a short presentation, and then we're gonna have some questions that the commission has of staff and the applicant, and then we're gonna open this up for public comment at that time. And then we'll be giving our comments as a commission after that. So, go ahead.
So we should have we're going to have Curtis jump on just because it's fresh in mind. So Curtis Rowe, our traffic engineer that did the traffic study, and he spoke at the last meeting. He's on, and we'll just let him mention any items as to what James just talked about, and then we'll jump into our other discussion comments.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Curtis, if you'd like to speak, please unmute, and you can address the commission.
Yes, hello everyone. Good evening again. I'm Curtis Rowe, our traffic engineer. Prepared the traffic impact study for this development. And so to look through those comments, I really appreciate Charlier and Associates, Jim, and his comments for this study. We addressed those comments in the updated traffic study, as well as providing a comment response letter. They obviously, I think the biggest point was the 3 days of counts. We selected a typical workday, average workday that had traffic occurring at Myers Company, and so that is representative of the volumes that we expect on a day-to-day basis. That was confirmed with the applicant, and so that is a representative count. Counts are expensive, they do cost $2,000 per day, and so, we do want to be careful when we're doing those counts, to pick a good time, and so that we do provide a representative data, or accurate data for that count. It was noted that there is going to be a reduction in truck traffic. With this existing use may generate truck trips, whereas the proposed use would generate very little truck traffic. And so that is just positive as it relates to the volume. We didn't take that into account in our analysis, just did a volume comparison, and obviously reducing truck traffic is a benefit. For the IT driven generation manual, the sample size, there are 49 morning data points and 59 afternoon peak hour data points for the residential, the multifamily rise, which actually is a good set of data. The R-squared values on those, which if you know statistics or remember statistics, they're in the 0.8, 0.85 range, and so those two represent good statistical data collection for that type of use. And then for operations, there was a comment about providing an operational analysis. Obviously, this redevelopment is lowering the traffic volume and lessening the truck traffic, and so given those facts, the traffic impacts associated with this site should lessen. It should lessen the redevelopment, and so that's why this study itself just had a limited scope of comparing the trip generation together. And then just lastly, note again, just this was pointed out, but we did not take any reductions in our traffic volumes for the coastal transit, for the BRT, for the Rapids stop, and so that provides conservative analysis, and so we like to provide a conservative analysis so that the jurisdiction can feel comfortable with the data comparison. In reality, we anticipate that the actual trips expected to be generated by this development will be less in the future. And I'm happy to answer your questions that may come up.
All right. We'll be asking, our board will be asking questions during our question period. So let's let the applicant get their presentation, and we'll load ourselves up with questions at that point.
Okay, Justin Freeze, Studio DH Architecture. So I am going to kind of follow James's outline of discussion topics. I've got a couple more slides that might not be in your packet or provide additional clarity. The first image you're seeing is an evolved rendering of more photorealistic and looking at the materials of what we'd be proposing to clad these buildings in. So you've got the single-story garage condo personal warehouses over on the left-hand side of that image, and then the 3-story residential with the tuck-under parking. We've looked a lot at, excuse me, projects like Tree Farm and Hoffman and some of the new developments around here. We've used kind of a wood look siding that's a little bit longer lasting than a typical siding, along with stacked stone. And different metals, and then provided banding and daylight into the storage units, along with steel balconies and canopies that wrap around the residential. And so that's our update to architectural design since our previous meeting, with a little bit more clarity. And we have more renderings forthcoming as we work our way through this design process. It is in that schematic design, conceptual design level currently, as we evolve through the process. The next two items on James's list were, both had to do with affordable housing. I just wanted to touch on those two items. So since our last meeting, we went in front of Bach. We talked through the unit mixes and the storage provision. So we have been working to revise our unit plans to provide a 2-bedroom unit along with 1-bedroom units and storage 5x10 storage unit for each of the deed restricted housing units. That results in losing a unit from each building. So we go from 48 total units down to 45 total units. That does not reduce the number of deed restricted housing units currently. So we would still be providing 12 units. So we are working through those plans and we'll be presenting those to Bach on February 12th for their review and response. I'm going to have you jump to the next slide. Those are, yep. And then with the reduction in units, we're also looking at a slight reduction in traffic count as well, with less units. So we've got the aerial here from the last meeting we had, just more for reference of both kind of the local business center south neighborhood and then the regional with Highway 82 and its proximity to downtown. I'll jump to the next one. This is our site plan again showing where the current floodplain is. And so with the regrading and the new building layout, it changes some. But that dashed line with the blue shade is where currently the FEMA 100-year floodplain is. And then these tables have been updated to show with the reduction down to 45 units, reduces our parking requirement down to 81 spaces. That is 1.5 spaces for each studio or 1 bedroom, and that is 2 spaces for each 2-bedroom, and 0.25 spaces for guest parking on the total of 45 residential units. Just a slight change as we've been working our way through those. I'll jump to the next slide. This just shows the current revision. The 2-bedroom unit is actually in the center on the bottom of that floor plate, showing that update. So we had 8 units per floor with an efficiency. That efficiency unit has gone away on this level and allowed us to allocate that square footage back to a 2-bedroom unit, and we'll have Bach review that further. We are still hoping to maintain a level category 2 across the board, an average of it, so there could be a category 1 or a category 3 type housing unit available, but maintaining kind of that middle category 2 on the 0 through 5 scale. Jump to the next one. This page I wanted to include, this is a part of our PUD amendment. This is the current use table of the Business Center South PUD and the allowable uses currently. And so as part of the process and looking at compatibility of use, we went through use by use and identified the ones in red as ones that we wanted to restrict as more heavy industrial uses. We can talk to that, further. Really, everything on the left-hand side of the chart is kind of small-scale industrial uses. I'll give a couple examples. It's research, testing, processing, repair, and cleaning of things like textiles, cosmetics, artwork, ceramics, furniture. And then just below kind of that, where the heavy red block in the middle is, it mentions shops for blacksmith, cabinet worker, machining, plumber, electrician, upholstery, or welding. Those were kind of the lower end uses that we thought could possibly in a warehouse type project fit, but we're open to more discussion on that, along with what we mentioned on the previous meeting, that what we've been seeing with these projects is usually 70 to 80% of these are actually personal warehouses for people, for RVs, boats, ATVs, additional vehicles. And so that is, what we've looked at when we look at traffic counts and look at the HOA and restricting uses, and basing it off of the table that is allowed currently in that district. The right-hand side of the chart, most of those have an S on it, which means special use, which means they would need to be reviewed further by planning and zoning. but most of them on the left are P for permitted uses. And then anything in red would be not allowed, and S, the yellow, is also special reviews. Those were ones that we restricted from either from a permitted down to a special review use in our PUD. I'll be a jump to the next one. So this is a cross-section and talking about the building heights. This is a cross-section through the building. There's some dimensions over on the right-hand side. And so I think we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting about how building height is truly measured. And so the 35-foot height is to the top of the roof, which if you see that kind of heavier black canopy over on the right, just above that. So that's the 35-foot measurement, is to the top of the roof sheathing. And then there's a 3-foot parapet wall that goes to that 38-foot height. This could be reduced down slightly. Right now, we feel it is in line with how the zoning code measures a building. It allows for an elevator overrun and would allow for that additional height on the parapet. It's just really the zoning code language versus the PUD language. It also provides for a little bit more generous height in the housing units to make them a little bit nicer, we feel. It could be compressed some, and so I wanted to get you guys a exhibit of that to look at. We'll jump to the next slide. So this is jumping over to the Cody Lane access. This would be the primary residential access, and these are the photos we looked at during the last meeting. So we have the CDOT access easement does allow for a sidewalk in that property. We've researched that. We do have some existing site infrastructure we'll have to deal with to install that sidewalk. Mainly, we've got a drainage ditch, and then you can see in the top left picture, we've got a USPS mailbox and a electrical transformer box that will have to be dealt with. But then I'll jump to the next picture, and we bumped up the property line weight on this a little bit heavier. So you've got the red property line, you've got the Rafta parking lot to the top right, you've got the CDOT access to the bottom, and then the Myers property 555 to the left. There's a slight dashed line in the corner down there, and that is an agreement between Rafta and CDOT for the access agreement to access Cody Lane. And so that is kind of how we're bending that sidewalk around in the other exhibit that was in the packet. Jump to the next. Okay, these are the photos we showed you last time for reference on the Few Lane existing conditions, and then we'll jump to the next. And then this is the exhibit that we enlarged and James showed you in his presentation. So all of the just line work, black circles, are the existing trees that we're proposing to keep. And those were based on the tree report that we had done by the arborist, about which had 50% or more life, and also those are some of the largest trees in the area, so trying to preserve what we can there. You'll see that there's about an 18-foot width in the first part of Few Lane, from property line to property line. There is a dashed line, which we believe is an access easement on the southern properties, running on those 3 properties there, but then that is where the property line narrows down, and you see there's 10-foot setback between the property line to the south and the 555 property, and then another 10 feet for that access easement or setback. I think there's been a lot of, we've read comments, we've had multiple meetings about this. I think we're open to different options, whether it is creating this as a one-way or expanding this somewhat to allow some extra width, especially where that next down towards Allison Lane, depending on comments from commission and the town. If there was the desire to take some of that property, I think the applicant would want to, make sure that that doesn't impact setbacks or reduce setbacks and impact to building location on the proposal. Jump to the next one. This is just the floodplain exhibit. Again, the change to the grading and the change to the building layouts results in the main southern warehouse building being out of the 100-year floodplain. The buildings, we're calling them C and D, to the eastern side of the storage, and the residential properties remain in the floodplain. Again, the reason for lifting the buildings up and letting any potential floodwaters pass through underneath the residential buildings. Then we'll just jump to the next one. An update on CDOT. CDOT was accepting of our traffic engineer's traffic study and his traffic letter in regards to the access easement. As James mentioned, currently it's for 5 trips daily. We're requesting it gets increased to use that as the residential access and push the residential traffic out to Cody Lane and then to the roundabout to Basalt Avenue. We are just kind of waiting now on their approval of that increase to the access easement. They have not requested anything more at this time, but they have been accepting of all of the studies and letters we've provided them to this point. Okay. Okay, we'll jump to the next one. I'll touch briefly on this construction management plan. As requested at the last meeting, we spoke to a couple of general contractors. This project has not been awarded or assigned to anyone in specific, so this was kind of their first take on how they might access the site. Thought process on this was to have access come in through Few Lane because there was concern about heavier traffic equipment backing up at the roundabout to turn left onto Cody Lane and then backing traffic up further with such a short runway to then get into the site. So their first proposal was to go to the next roundabout or the next intersection and then come through that access one, but then push traffic out through the Cody Lane access. Again, this is one general contractor's first take at this. And then they would have staging areas and a job site trailer basically in the center of the project with 2 trash dumpsters on either side, one for the residential and one for the storage warehouses. There is the possibility of phasing this development just depending on construction window or construction timelines. And also, as we mentioned, we are proposing a property line between the two so that a separate developer could do either the residential or the storage, or they could become separate projects. And so that would provide for a shared job site trailer or back-to-back, depending on how they chose to proceed with this or phase this project. And then access gates near both of the stars. And I think those are the major items that we wanted to touch on. We are aware of the wildfire mitigation and green building design standards and are planning to implement those. And we have worked through things with Public Works, Basalt Sanitation, and Roaring Fork Fire as far as the buildings being fully sprinkled, using fire-resistant or fire-hardened materials, and the current water line access and how we best kind of appropriate that with the existing conditions. We have the civil engineer who did those designs here and the applicant, and we're ready to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Let's do some commissioner questions. Bob, would you like to start?
Sure. My question is on the traffic study. I want to make sure that I'm clear on this. Currently, all traffic is coming and going through the west side of Few Avenue, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then it's proposed in the design here that you're going to have traffic for the self-storage in a similar location, but all the apartment dwellers will have access through Cody Lane, correct?
Yep.
So we need to realize that much of the traffic issues for Few Lane are reduced. correct? 2/3, 3/4, 90% of the traffic is now going to be coming through Cody Lane.
Yes, the higher intensity use of the residential, just because you've got 45 units, would be going out that way. There is a gate separating the properties. The gate would have a Knox box access for fire department emergency to go through the properties, but the residential users would not have that access.
Assuming we get the CDOT approvals.
Assuming we get CDOT approvals. That's
Is
correct.
that, James, anything that,
Am I correct there, James? This is as we understand it, correct?
Yeah, I think you're correct there, and Rob, yeah, to respond, we don't have a response from CDOT as of yet. I can't guess to what their response is gonna be.
Understood.
Honestly.
Just wanted everybody to be clear about that, because that does lessen my concerns with the traffic issue.
All right.
That's my comment.
Okay. Rob, do you have any questions?
just curious, James, why the green building in Wildfire was a condition? I mean, isn't it automatically?
It's automatically required. Basically, in all our PUDs, we like to require that it be the code that's in effect at the time of permit instead of at development review approvals. So that's kind of the distinction, because we do anticipate changes before they get to permit.
Okay. We still have our traffic guys?
Yeah.
I think it was Jim that said that we're anticipating less truck traffic, but is that based on anything?
There won't be semis. Myers has semis coming out every day,
Okay, we don't really know what's going to be going to the storage units, though.
but not as a steel yard has a lot of semis coming in and out.
Okay.
So that's my thinking. I guess the
Well,
traffic.
that's theory. I was wondering if there was data before that.
Jim, can you please respond to that question?
Sure. It's highly, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I agree, it's highly likely that, the amount of truck traffic from the proposed project would be quite a lot less than what is experienced today. It's also accurate, however, that, the vehicle classification was not part of the traffic study. So we don't really have, I mean, it's a reasonable assumption, and I'm comfortable with it, but we don't actually have any hard data to prove it.
Okay, and did Jim and Curtis decide whether one day was going to be sufficient, or are we going to go ahead and do the 3 days of traffic study?
Jim had identified that he thought it would be appropriate
Do
to
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday?
go to the 3-day scenario. And Curtis indicated that the applicants didn't believe that that was necessary. So there's probably still not agreement on that.
Yeah, we could add that to your
We could add it.
comments.
Okay.
Because we've been a lot more discussion about that later.
That's all,
You
thanks.
good?
With the traffic study, I guess it would be Curtis, what does the trip generation on paper state for a operation like Meyer Steel?
Yes, I have that. So Myers Steel generates 22 trips in the morning peak hour and 36 in the afternoon peak hour.
That's what you guys counted. What is the table of the trip generation state?
Yeah, so there isn't an exact use out of the IT trip generation manual, but that is a great question. I did look at comparable uses, and several of the comparable uses to what Myers would be would actually show higher traffic generation than what we obtained for our accounts.
Okay.
Again, we did a conservative analysis. We wanted to provide the most thoughtful study for you to make the best decision possible and not have any ambiguity. And then again, doing counts on one day, that's just typical standard traffic. engineering procedure. I've been doing this 32 years, and we've never been required or requested to provide multiple day counts for a project such as this.
Question for James, what's staff's, you mentioned Public Works, Police, what's their hesitation with the one-way? If they're going that way?
I think generally they think this is an opportunity to be able to get a full-on two-way access there that meets standards, as well as, when there is construction or when there is an emergency that shuts down the main access, they feel that it would be good to have a full 2 lanes so that they can route traffic around a portion of Southside Drive and Basalt Avenue if it were shut down.
Okay. The exhibit with the sidewalk shows multiple encroachments on the RAFTA property. Has RAFTA approved that?
RAFTA has indicated that they are supportive of putting the sidewalk on the Up Valley side of it. As I noted, the proposal was originally to go across the park and ride, and RAFTA would not support that.
Okay. And then I guess from a process standpoint, what happens if CDOT denies the increase in vehicle traffic across that easement?
Well, from a staff perspective, the applicants would probably have to go back and look at other ways to access the property. I don't know if you have other answers to that.
We have looked at a site layout that would push all traffic out towards the few lane roundabout. It would reduce a couple of the storage units, but it would still accommodate circulation for both fire and getting in and out of the warehouse spaces.
Okay. Those are all my questions.
Okay, great. I have a few questions. One of them, the first question is, so CDOT has flat out refused to have a pedestrian connection, just a pedestrian-only connection, mid of the north side of the site.
CDOT or RAFTA?
RAFTA.
Yep.
Yeah.
They just said no, flat out. No.
They said don't.
They didn't give reasoning, but it's my assumption that it's liability and safety. The reference was made that, you'd have pedestrians crossing drive lanes. And so they preferred we move it to the CDOT access side.
Okay. And my second question is actually kind of a request of staff. Could you give us a very quick primer on what triggers the second means of egress out of South Side? Because I don't think a lot of people on the board now haven't been here for that.
Sure.
And I think we should know what we're talking about and how the roundabout on Cody Lane impacts that.
So the master plan, going back several master plans actually, has a concept of doing a second access out of Southside that would connect the Midland Avenue by the post office with Southside Drive by Big O Tires, and it would be an underpass. However, the cost of that over time has just grown, and so it's very significant at this point. Several years back, 2017, SGM did a traffic study for all of Southside and potential growth in Southside, and it identified a level of service for the Basalt Avenue Highway 82 intersection that could sustain the amount of growth that was projected. One of the improvements that was identified as possibly improving the situation without going to the full-on second access and underpass would be to construct a mini roundabout at Basalt Avenue and East Cody Lane, and then add additional lanes going out of Basalt Avenue onto Highway 82, going left or down Valley. and it would also free up a right free lane for those traveling up Valley off of Basalt Avenue. And the biggest impact that it would have is it would remove the split phase from the signal at Highway 82 and Basalt Avenue, which would allow traffic on both the south and the north side to be able to turn at the same time, which would reduce queuing. And so other developments in Southside after that 2017 SGM study have been required to contribute to the potential of putting in that Southside roundabout and lane improvements to get rid of the split phase.
Okay, and is the Cody Lane slip lane non-functional anymore? That's not an operable idea?
You mean taking at the end of the cul-de-sac and jumping onto Highway 82 with
Yeah,
a
at
slip
one point
lane?
that was discussed.
You
That's
know,
gone.
the traffic engineers have looked at that. They did not seem to think that that was getting as much bang for your buck as doing the mini roundabout and lane changes that got rid of the split phase.
No, that's good to know. All right, thank you. Thank you. Okay, anyone have any further questions they want to expound on? No? Let's open up the public comments portion of this at 7:09. Please come up to the podium so we can hear you and you can be recorded. Please state your name and where you live, please. And I'll try to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
Sorry.
Hello, my name is Laurel Fox. I think I've emailed Michelle and James. Nice to meet you guys. Sorry. I'm just wondering how many people live in Southside? Any of you guys? Okay, so I'm a substitute teacher, and I've seen the traffic coming out of the high school, and when they get out early or lunchtime, which I know Mary can relate to. So sorry, hold on, let me just get my thought here. So we have a problem just with the high school kids cruising through Southside just in general and exiting in a very hurried manner, which has caused accidents. We're afraid people are going to get hurt. They don't stop at stop signs. I live on Allison Lane and Meadowview. Is it Meadowview? Meadowview. So, and Mary sees a lot of them come down Sunnyside, is it Somerset? Somerset, sorry. So we just have the issue of, I don't think any of you have actually driven at the light when kids are getting out of school and people are trying to turn left. It is already 25 minutes that you're waiting to go from Basalt Lane, turning left onto Highway 82, or going straight. Usually the right is okay, but I don't know that a mini roundabout would work. I mean, I don't know what that would do, but mainly I'm here to protect our neighborhood, which is, there's a lot of things still not finished, which is Stotts Mill, still not completely developed. We have a third storage unit on Southside Lane, still not finished. So that's gonna be a ton more truck traffic and just a lot more things happening. So I just think you guys haven't considered just Highway 82. I don't know where this traffic study was done, but I can also tell you, the seniors were out of school. Those are our drivers. They were out of school on May 21st. So that doesn't do us any good in figuring out a traffic study. So.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I'm Stacy Stokes. I have also written letters. I live in Southside, and we actually live on the corner of Few Lane, and now you call it Allison on your map, but we think it's Few that just goes straight out into Alexander. We would like to see that road made a one-way because, as she said, none of you live in Southside. I watch it every day, all day, from my kitchen. I can see it. I've seen a crash. I hear multiple screeching brakes. And the way Few Lane is set up, our driveways are huge, they're wide. So even if the road was to be made 2 lanes, people can still come right into my driveway. I was almost hit in my own driveway because someone pulled in, because something was on the other side. I understand you think at 2 lanes it would be made safer. We don't need more traffic in our South Side neighborhood. There's a daycare at the end of Few Lane. I've seen kids fly. I've yelled at somebody and they've called me an effing bitch because I told them to slow down, and he lives down the street from me in Southside. People are in a hurry, we're rushed, that's the way the world is. But there's a park on Meadowview and Allison. There's the daycare at the end of Few. And none of us can come up with any good reason why increasing traffic in our Southside neighborhood is a good thing. There's too many children, there's growing children riding bikes. I talked to the police yesterday. They came and put some kind of something that's checking something right off my deck. And I said to him yesterday, I said, sir, with all due respect, you're watching from the wrong vantage point. And they came and put whatever that thing is there. And so now everybody comes around the corner at Few, sees whatever the cops put, and they slow down. So they're not seeing people fly out there. We need a stop sign at the end of that road. It needs to be one way, and I understand for emergency services. I tried to do this 2 years ago, get it made one way to get emergency in faster. If there's a path that is put up by the new development on one side that is level, it's the same thing they use in states that have hurricanes. You open it up for emergency access. You open it up for traffic mitigation if Basalt Avenue were to be closed. There's ways to use roads in different ways if you have traffic mitigation. It doesn't have to be overused all the time. And if that Few Lane turns into a two-way street, Southside is going to be a really dangerous place. And it's not just high schoolers, it's residents too. And they fly through there, and we need a stop sign at the end of that road. There's too many kids. You've got a daycare at the end of the street. I think Mary came up with the idea of doing two ways so that people can turn around. We watch there, we live there, we see it all day long. We understand. So I've heard traffic mentioned probably 95 times in this meeting since it began an hour and 15 minutes ago. Traffic is a problem, and no traffic study in the world is going to tell you exactly how traffic is going to be in Southside. No matter what you do, we're going to get more traffic. So why make it less safe for our children? That just doesn't make any sense to me, having more cars fly through a park and a daycare. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Ms. Mayor, Mary Wolfer. I have the preschool at the end, the hobby farm, and the kinder cottage. And I'm not opposed. They're doing great. That's wonderful what you're doing. But it needs to be a one-way. It is so dangerous. You've seen my letters. I've talked to James and to the chief over the last several years about the safety concerns, especially with the Somerset Trail coming in, where it merges to Few Lane with the bikes and the e-bikes and the pedestrians and the baby strollers and the Airbnbers that don't know where they're walking or where they're going with the bikes. It's an accident waiting to happen. Someone is going to get hurt. And if you're making it two-way, it's going to be that much more dangerous. I gave you a suggestion, and I'm not an engineer, but there is a right-of-way. Would you even look at that, consider opening up the right-of-way? I gave you a diagram. Did anyone see it? I sent that to you all. And I don't know who to ask that. I just know that I never want to put a child in harm's way. And that's harm's way, to the point that I may have to not be there. And that's really hard. So share that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
We have John Fitzpatrick on, he's got his hand up on the internet here on the Zoom. John, if you'd like to provide comments to the P&Z, please unmute.
Yes, thank you. Again, I'm John Fitzpatrick, I'm the president of Basalt Distilleries. One thing I think the traffic study is missing is how much traffic is going to be increased on Cody Lane. I think it's going to be a big impact on us. I think Cody Lane at a minimum down there needs to add curbs, gutters, sidewalks on both sides, just like the rest of Cody Lane has. I think it would be safer for pedestrians, safer for bicycles. You know they're going to be coming out of the new development. I think it's really changing an industrial zone into residential. So we really need to look at, you know, to say. And this is all.
All right, thank you. Any other comments, online or in person? No? Let's close at 7:17, public hearing portion of the meeting, and let's move on to commissioner comments. Mike, would you like to add some comments?
Yeah. From the testimony here tonight and, hearing the way Fuse being used as maybe more of a collector, I don't see how making it 18 feet wide and a 2-lane creates a safer passage because it's not meeting the requirements of a collector. That's maybe a local street width. It's not acting as a local street width with the traffic and the high school kids using it. I think I do like Mary's idea on traffic flow. I think that's a more controlled local street solution to the issues on Few. With that being said, we're not making that decision at this table. And so if it's going to go to 2-lane, I think some pedestrian infrastructure at the end of Somerset where that bike lane comes out at a very minimum needs to be as part of this project. And so just kind of considering those options, I think is important. Again, I do think the one-way has some value. We keep harping on this traffic study, but the applicants talked about a plumber having a yard there. The traffic counts say 1 trip in, 0 trips out in the AM. So I just don't think I understand what the paperwork says and, what that is, the literature says and what it's getting to with those traffic counts. I just don't think it's necessarily realistic from the examples you provided. I mean, you're 40-something storage units, 1 trip in, 1 trip out during peak. I don't know. That seems really low. If it is being used as people with boats and, that may seem realistic, but I mean, commercial space in this town, we're seeing it or industrial space, we're seeing it kind of disappear. And so these businesses do need some place to operate. I understand it can't be their primary place of business, but I just question those numbers.
All right.
I don't think I have anything else at this time.
Thank you, Mike. Rob, comments?
Well, I did have 2 girls at Basalt High School, so I know what it's like trying to get out of there at 3:30. And I think I kind of agree with Mike and Mary that there seems to be a way around this. We're not traffic study people, but I think engineers can make it work where we can circulate safely. I have left my car at Hightone and tried to walk down Cody Lane, and it's not really pedestrian friendly. And if we're putting 40-odd units there, we probably should look at making that more pedestrian friendly as well. I know it's early in the renderings, but that those buildings were kind of blah. I know I'm not the architect, you are.
Now that I'm chairing, I'm not going to say anything super critical like I normally would.
You normally would, so I was counting on you. Yeah.
I could if you requested.
Well, it's, what is it?
Of me.
Southside, it's turning into a nice if it's turning into a nice residential neighborhood, it just have nice residential buildings. And what we saw up there.
I'll dwell on some comments.
You can take it more architecturally further than I can, but I'd like to see it more in tone with the rest of the neighborhood if that's the direction it's going. That's all.
All right. Thank you, Rob. Bob, comments?
My comments are very similar to Mike Horvath's regarding the traffic counts and also regarding Few becoming a one-way street. It seems like a safe alternative for this neighborhood with everything else that's going on. And we do need to recognize that more traffic is going to be flowing onto Cody and less on Few Lane. And that's the reality of the situation here, I think, that will be happening. And I do also agree that a traffic study, we all know that traffic is lighter, almost the lightest of the year in May, in late April and May, when so many people are out of town. And it seems like May 21st is a very odd day to have a traffic count, even if it is for an industrial building that has a company that works year-round. It just seems not the right time to have it. Doesn't
Is
make
there a
sense.
question there that I can answer?
Do you have a question for the traffic engineer?
No, it's just a comment that the timing of the count in the month of the year that's the quietest of the year here is not ideal. That's the statement.
And
The counts were conducted in November, for the state highway and for the Basalt Avenue. They were actually done on Thursday, November 3rd, 2022. The count of May 21st was just the driveway counts for Myers. So just wanted to clarify that. But all the operational analysis that we did for the south side are based on counts from November 3rd.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay. It's good to know.
Okay. Is that your comments? You have any?
No, nothing else. Thank you.
All right. I have some comments that I would like to put in here, and it's all an elaboration on a lot of what has been spoken of before. My first comment is I am not in favor of a storage waiver without some sort of creative solutions, but it does sound like you guys are working on that. So we'll see what happens with that. I still think, and this has been a big topic of conversation, that as far as both Few Lane and Cody Lane, we really need to be more creative about what we're doing. I know it's fire and police's desire to make this all highways because they're very truck-oriented. I think we can get more creative. I've suggested some things which are kind of European ideas, which people see as very loopy, and they're not going to be in favor of things like that. But it's my understanding that AASHTO is going to come out with a new green book relatively soon, and it's going to address multimodal transport, car interfaces with pedestrians, and all of that stuff. And I think a more creative solution, if it comes from, the traffic engineer's Bible, which that green book is, I think we could probably find a path through this without, killing people or squishing kids. I think that's important. Other people have done it. I think we can do it too, and we don't always have to do it with bigger roads or faster roads. So that's, I'm just imploring all of us to get really creative with that. And I think a document from an engineering handbook would help us a lot. Let's see. I think that the TOD nature of this project is impressive. And I don't want to do anything that stands in the way of that. I am unhappy that RAFTA does not allow for pedestrians to cross the parking lot, but on top of there being pedestrians crossing where cars drive, they'd also lose a parking spot. And, when your whole thing is transit, you don't want to lose a parking spot. It's like gold. And so I can see where they're coming from, but if anyone has been to a college campus, pedestrians go where pedestrians go, regardless of what they're allowed to do. So let's just kind of keep that in our back pockets. It just happens. I agree with Bach's comments on their number one comment about storage, which again, we're working on. I'm not necessarily so sure about the 2-bedroom part, but you guys are working on it as well. I think it's a very market-driven thing, and I think that is, I've done a whole ton of affordable housing, and the 2 bedrooms always take a long time to fill up. The studios and 1-bedrooms always fill up fast. So, but again, this is a negotiation between staff, the town, and the applicants. But it's like, I think, you got to be careful with these decisions. 1 or 2 bedrooms, I could see that. It happens, and that you can fill those. But a whole slug of them, they'll sit for a long time. I also agree with the idea of a broader traffic study, not so much because the ineffectiveness of the traffic study that was done, but because of to be reflective of the school traffic, which seems to be a problem for the broader neighborhood at large and may or may not have been fully accounted for in the traffic study. So I think to err on the side of keeping our neighbors safe, that is a wise thing to put into the next round of conditions. Maybe not 2 traffic studies like Charlier was asking for, but at least an additional one that will capture the school traffic. Because, I don't live in Southside, but I have ridden my bike on Fiu Lane a lot because it's the place where cars don't go, and it's the place where I don't want to get squished, so I go that way. So I can see what everyone is saying, and I think we'd be very mindful of that. I think also the best category mix we can get is useful, because as opposed to all being all more category 2, like Bach was saying. I'm not so sure that's, I think a broader mix is the best thing for what we've got in Basalt. As far as the building height, I said this last time, but I think, to coordinate the PUD with the town code is a good thing, because one, it's fair to do that, but also this will probably have heat pumps for the HVAC of the units, and heat pumps that work in the cold are huge and really ugly and scary looking. They look like alien spaceships. And so having something to shield them is a very good idea because the neighbors do not want to look at those things. So it's probably best for everyone to accept a little bit higher building. That's all my comments. Does anyone have any further comments to make?
Yeah, you speak to this multimodal concept, and I think, looking at a multimodal solution to Fiu is an important piece of this. There are a lot of people riding bikes through that neighborhood, the Rio Grande Trail, the school, and so I encourage you guys to not only look at vehicle traffic but multimodal traffic through the corridor.
Yeah, and it's not just bikes and pedestrians, it's weird things like scooters and recumbents and all kinds of strange things that people haven't even thought of yet. So, you never know what's going to be on there, but I think just thinking outside of the box is a really good idea. And if AASHTO's doing it, we can do it too. Because AASHTO, it's the American Association of Highway and Street Engineers, something like that. They're the people who design highways.
Okay.
And they're coming out with a new version of their guideline soon. Do we have a motion to
Motion
continue?
to continue with the,
17?
to the 17th, with the suggestions that we look into more creative traffic mitigation in the neighborhood, as well as more creative building design.
Yes. Oh, I forgot to say that.
Got you covered.
Yes, you got, we need to do that. The building is, it's ugly, and we can do better. And I'll save my adjectives till next time, but it could use some help.
Can I ask for some clarity just on traffic and the traffic studies, as we've discussed, maybe extending it out? So to Curtis's point, the traffic in and out of Southside was done in November on a Thursday. The traffic in and out of Myers was done on a Tuesday in May. And so looking at if we were to condition for more traffic, wondering, if we can get a recommendation on that. And then also the applicant wanted to point out that traffic since the in and out was done on May 21st, they've expanded operations and they have about 30 more employees from that time frame. So we would anticipate that number would probably go up. And so we just wanted to make those couple of points.
And historically, the average number of employees we've had over the last 10 years is around 100. The day of the traffic study, we had 50 employees. I just want to clarify that.
Okay. I think the best thing, because we're not qualified as a board. I think it's for staff to negotiate with you guys as to we just want something more creative as a board, but, and so that it takes into account some of those other parts that have no effect, that are not affected by what you're doing, but will be coming through what you're doing. So I think for staff and the applicant to negotiate a more inclusive traffic,
Comprehensive.
Sure.
comprehensive traffic study.
If I can, I'd like to just clarify a couple quick things regarding the traffic study. The goal here is for the applicant to demonstrate that the new use is not going to increase the amount of traffic that exists today. And so I just want to reiterate that to the public as well. It's to determine that the amount of traffic caused by the new development is no different than what exists today. It is not to count what happens at the high school or what happens otherwise, because we already know that that's what it is. So I just want to be really clear as we're talking about what our goals are of getting more traffic counts done. So I think really the question for the commission is, are you comfortable with the singular day of traffic counts, or would you like that to be re-examined?
I think we're pretty uniform in wanting it to be re-examined at some level.
Right. That's what I heard as well, but I just wanted to make sure that we're all understanding the
I
same
think all of
standard.
us are the same thing.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay. Rob, was you in the middle of a motion?
Yeah, do we need to amend it to, we talked about more creative traffic circulation and further traffic studies, does that cover us?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
As well as more creative architectural consideration?
Yeah. Okay, we have a first.
I second.
We have first, we have a second. All in
Second.
favor?
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Motion is continued. Thank you all very much for your work.
Thank you. Damn it. So late. What? Well, we never got any letters from the HOA traffic. I'd really like to hear from Southside HOA.
I know.
I mentioned that last time. I'd like to hear from Southside HOA, whatever HOA is, Stotts Mill as well. And I said that last time.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's see.
Well, there's an intersection get out of the
Thank you very much.
Well, that's the stuff that someone needs to study.
Welcome back, Ben.
We're just guessing. Ben, why did you recuse? Is that, I can ask, right?
You certainly can.
That's a-
You know, I work for Kinley Horn. I have worked in the past with Curtis Rowe, just to take any conflict of interest potentially in or out of it.
In the but not currently.
Nope, I'm not. I mean, I currently work for Kinley Horn. I'm not currently associated with this project at all.
Okay.
But Kinley Horn is associated as the traffic engineer with this project, and as a employee of Kinley Horn, I just thought it would best to
I don't know if you work for.
step outside.
Thank you for your abundance of caution.
Yeah.
Ethics are important. That's all we got to live by.
All righty. We have a public hearing for accessory dwelling unit and community housing
Hard against it.
code amendments. Oh, boy.
Yeah, thank you. We have with us this evening, we've got Christian Weber and Eric Krongold of Design Workshop. As a little bit of background, this is a public hearing on code amendments to the accessory dwelling unit requirements as well as community housing mitigation requirements. Essentially, the changes to the ADU section are to permit ADUs throughout town in residential zone districts. And then there are also adjustments to the affordable housing mitigation requirements that are proposed in the town code. As a little bit more background, in 2024, EPS concluded the housing needs assessment, and out of that were recommendations that the town consider changes to the mitigation requirements as well as to develop an ADU incentive program. The Basalt Affordable Community Housing Commission, P&Z, and Council all reviewed concepts for changes to the mitigation, as well as reviewed an ADU incentive program framework and passed several resolutions that were included in your packet. And so now Design Workshop has taken the next step to provide draft code amendment language. And so with that, I will turn it over to Christian and Eric to go over in more detail what the proposed changes are. Guys, can you hear us? Yes, I'm sorry. I have to promote you to allow you to talk. Okay, you guys should be able to talk now.
Thanks, James. Appreciate that. Yes, so we have some slides, and James, I don't know if you're going to share those for your screen, and then we'll just talk to them. What's the best way to go on this?
Yes, I can do that. Just a quick second.
Okay, am I able to see this slides? Okay, perfect. Awesome. Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Eric Crowell, I'm the Senior Associate with Design Workshop. Our Denver studio, we do quite a bit of work up in the Roaring Fork Valley with our Aspen studio, our Basalt studio. Joining me, my colleague Christian Weber, who also sits in Denver with me, and has worked with me over the last 5 years or so on this particular project. Next slide, please. So, as James mentioned, we're going to spend most of our time today talking about the code amendments that we made relative to changes in engagement rates and trying to ease the pathway of meetings with the community. Though I felt it was just important to quickly touch on some of the other work that we've done that's led us to here today. So just quickly looking down this list, we really started this project with a literature review, looking at what other communities were doing in the state, really to understand what common challenges are we seeing from an affordable housing production standpoint, and then what common or inventive solutions are we seeing to create, to incentivize or ease the pathway for affordable housing. While we're doing the literature review, we're also doing a review of the existing code. So we evaluated the relevant sections of the Basalt code to identify what we thought are regulatory barriers that may affect the production of affordable housing within the community. As James mentioned, we worked with EPS for this project. Really, their work was focused on mitigation rate analysis. They were looking into what peer communities were doing relative to commercial mitigation and community housing mitigation rates to see where the salt fell and where some opportunities that some rate adjustments may lie. And you'll see some of those recommendations reflected in our guidelines. This work really culminated in two areas of work. First was the deed restrictions that were James mentioned earlier. I believe we presented to you all last year. And the second is this final tranche of work, which is our ADU incentive program. So we put together the program framework, presented it to town council last year, and now we're just getting to the regulators to try to bring some of that program to fruition. Next slide, please. So we'll walk through these outlines at a high level. Happy to go back and clarify these proposed assessments as we move through this. The first major one was chapter 60, part 1, and this is relative to the definition section. Currently, there was a definition section, definition section out of the portion of the code. So we brought AD definition into the section and updated it to be in line with some of the other dimensional requirements that we instituted elsewhere in the code. We also, we relocated the community housing definition to this section as well. There was some confusion with the different definitions. Next slide, please. Other maybe the second is chapter 16 dual. Secondly, the allowing or adding as a purpose will be used in all residential districts. And additionally, in section 16.31, we made some changes to, I'll say the dimensional requirements for ADUs, giving it a little bit more leeway in terms of maximum ADU size. Also address the floor area and lots for ADU, allowed for ADUs. Next slide. One of the biggest changes in our guidelines was to chapter 16 article 4, section 16.65, the PDD amendment approval process. So currently, the addition of ADU to existing PDD would require that applicant to go through a rather arduous process where I have a review for planning and zoning commission and town council. Through our discussion with staff, implemented guidelines that classify ADUs as either an insubstantial or substantial modification. Accordingly, they were subject to administrative approval if they still within PUD. This would be approved by so long as the ADU that the applicant and the ADU conform with the adopted PUD standards that's being built. This is also granted an off-ramp in the case where there was some murky conditions or uncertainty around the ADU's conformity with the PUD standards, whereby they could push it to the planning and zoning commission for further review and recommendation. Really the goal for this guideline was just to try to ease the process overall and take some uncertainty out of it to try to increase production within the community. Next slide, please. These, for chapter 16, or 14, section 16-1-2, this is where definition existed. We removed it and replaced it with the definition in the definitions section. For section 16-1-6, this is where it changes really the EPS work came into play. So there were two primary changes. The first was around the community housing requirement. Currently, 25% of net square feet residential and 20% of total residential with the mitigation requirement. EPS recommended an opportunity for an increase for either 30 to 35% of total net square feet of residential development and 25 to 35% of total residential units, respectively. This is an area where we have this range because I think this is where input from this group would be appreciated as well as town council to see where the desire is to land. The second change came the exemption sizes. So currently, residential use exemption sizes for detached structures 50,000 square feet for an attached structure is 1,400 square feet. Initially, the recommendation was to decrease the detached exemption size to 1,500 square feet and the attached exemption size to 1,000 square feet. We brought this up to law, and there was some concern from the group around penalizing residents and putting additional burden on them. So we have two options here. The first would be the initial recommendation, which is just uniform change for the occupant. The second would be to bifurcate the exemption size. So resident occupied mixed-use development would be 3,000 square feet
attached to 1,400 square feet for attached, and a non-resident occupied would be at 1,500 and 100 square feet. Really trying to get to reduce the burden on residents in the community. So this is another area we open up for questions. We can definitely get some feedback on. Next question, please. Additionally, coming out of EPS's work was some changes in the mitigation rate. So they recommended a change for the new commercial development mitigation rate to 30% of new employees generated, up from 15%. For new use restriction commercial development, changed to 15% of new employees generated rather than 10%. And whereas before it was only when you had a mixed-use project where maybe both numbers came into play, you could only hire one, changing to be applicable to both mitigation rates. And these rates are based on EPS or more alignment with what comparable communities, both in the Roaring Fork Valley and the Western Slope, are doing for their mitigation. Next slide, please. So those were the primary elements to the existing code. One of the other major pieces of our work was around actually creating a new ADU concession. Really in an effort to do a couple of kind of key things. Next slide, James. We wanted to really consolidate information to make it easier for applicants to find requirements for ADUs in the community. We wanted to add additional clarity for folks, and really just create some additional clarity and pathways that hopefully can increase production in the community. Finally, I'd like to start to set up a framework for an optional ADU grant and revolving loan program. This was something that came out of our program recommendations memo that we shared with town council last year. So some of these guidelines will expect to set that framework. Next slide. So quickly walking through this new section, this major chunks. The first section, 16-47, really just clarifies the purpose of the section to provide additional clarity for others and the public to promote consistency of approval for ADUs, to ensure that they're developed in a manner that supports the town, and to facilitate ADUs as a means to further this kind of mission housing choices for the community and diversification as we talk. The next section provides additional definitions. So here we reference section 16-412 where we relocated the ADU definition. We also added in this particular section additional definitions for both attached dwelling units and detached ADUs and detached accessory dwelling units or detached ADUs. Applicability, this is where we clarify that ADUs are allowed by right on zone districts. And for section 16-4.0, approval process within planned developments, this is where we clarify these streamlined administrative processes for ADUs within PUDs. Next slide, please. Section 16.1 development standards. This is where we establish clearly predictable lot size requirements, height setback requirements for ADUs, and parking standards to try and support them while also maintaining neighborhood compatibility. For section 16-492 occupancies and regulations, this is where we decouple ADUs from the mandatory affordable housing requirements. We'll also offer voluntary workforce housing incentives. This is where we start to get into setting the stage for this grant revolving loan program participation. So this section clarifies tenant eligibility if this program is to come into play. This particular section clarifies what tenants are applicable if funds from that program were used to construct an ADU, and then what types of use restrictions may be required from anyone who receives funds for that particular program. Finally, section 16-493
protest needs LGBTs already exist that may be non-conforming at the time of these updated regulations. And it further eliminate existing use restrictions on IEDs unless amended by the town council. So, it's a bit of a whirlwind. Appreciate everyone's associations as we ran through this, but I'm happy to open up for any questions. And thank you.
All right, let's offer up some questions. Ben, would you like to start?
Yes, minimum ADU size requirements. Is my mic off on?
Too high.
It's too high, okay. Minimum ADU size requirements, I think I saw you said it, you've raised it from 300 to 415. We've already approved here as board with the Jadwin parcel studios at 350 square feet. Is that what 373? Weren't there variances that were provided for reduction in minimums?
At BCC, the studio units were in the 370 range. However, ADUs, that section that you're referring to is the R4 MD zone district.
Okay.
And it had different standards than the rest of the code for ADUs. And so just kind of making them all consistent throughout the code in terms of sizes is what was proposed as part of that section.
But the definition is still the same of it's a livable, separate, single-family unit.
So it's single unit, yeah.
Single unit.
Yeah.
With all means of eating, sanitation. I mean, I saw the definition.
Correct.
But yet we are approving variances below that in private development.
And accessory dwelling units are different than multifamily dwelling
A house
units?
is a house is a house, right?
Well, under our code.
These have a prescriptive component to it, that if you just meet those requirements, you don't have to come to this board.
Gotcha.
So
That's the prescription, is that we are setting the bar high enough so
That's
that
a
we
good
can
answer, yeah.
we can skip the line.
Yeah.
No further questions.
I noticed the lot minimum increase from 5,000 feet to 6,000 feet. Is that?
That's only in the R4MD zone district. In the other zone districts that currently allow ADUs like R3TN, the minimum size is 8,000, so it actually came down from 8 to 6.
Okay.
For these amendments.
So it increased in R4 mixed and then dropped in others.
Yeah.
Okay. No further questions.
Questions, Ron? Questions?
Seems like a big stumbling block here is getting HOA buy-in. And was that addressed, discussed, any, carrots, incentives to do that?
Do you want to respond?
Yeah, so part of the task for Design Workshop during this process was to create a template for individual HOAs to use to adjust their covenants to make ADUs legal in their PUDs. We as the town cannot do that for them and can't afford to do that either. So we're creating the framework to make it easier. Down the road, the council might decide to do some financial incentives for that. So right now, this is the low-hanging fruit, is to make it legal zoning-wise.
Okay, yes, that's low-hanging fruit, but that's not gonna move the needle like getting the HOA buy-in.
Well, if it's not legal to start with, you're probably not going to try to change your covenant. So there's a little bit of that going on,
So
but
this
yes.
is the first step?
Right.
Okay.
That said, Design Workshop did reach out to various HOAs throughout town, and there was some interest amongst some of the HOAs in potentially looking at legalizing after the town adjusted the code to permit them. But we'll see how many follow through with that.
It would be nice to touch back on that in 6 months and see if we've moved the needle.
Okay.
That's all.
I just have one clarification. It stated the max FAR, that's relative to the house that it's being added to. at 0.33. Okay. I think it's a great idea to make it as easy as possible.
Okay, I have a question, and I tried to parse this out. There's a lot of code to wade through, but I didn't see any part that required them actually to be rented or to be used as a, especially when we're decoupling them from affordability. How do these not become extra bedrooms above and beyond the FAR for rich people? That I can't see how, it just seems like a giveaway, you know, it's like, yeah, you can add an extra bedroom.
Yeah, so to get your permit for your ADU, it has to be more than an extra bedroom, right? It has to have the cooking facilities and the restrooms and all of those things. One thing we're seeing is that since they're not allowed anywhere right now, in town basically, there's not an incentive to make potentially bandit ADUs legal.
Yeah,
Secondly, the cost of construction is prohibitive. So you can't do it by zoning code. You can't afford to do it. So the next step after going forward here would be for the council to create an economic incentive, such as a revolving loan program for property owners to afford to actually do it. To get funds through that revolving loan program, and that's what I was talking about earlier, you'd have to deed restrict the unit to build it.
to get funds from the town. But this allows, because I'm seeing the people who are building houses in my subdivision, and spending an extra $500,000 on something is like, you know, hey, an extra bedroom that FAR doesn't allow me to have. I could see that happening a lot.
Yeah, so it's true. I mean, that is a risk. One of the restrictions in here is that you're not allowed to use it for STRs.
But we're worried about building a ADU and then having the in-laws live there, right?
Yeah, you know, it's your property, you could decide who you want to live there, but the whole point of this is, you know, to
But
make.
if you're getting additional ADR, FAR,
Yeah,
to build an ADU that's meant to be used for workforce housing, not in-law housing.
that's what I'm saying, I don't see much workforce or community building component to this, other than,
Well, the enforcement part, or,
I just see, I see a lot of avenues for abuse of this. That's all. If I sat down and really figured it out and put my other hat on how to abuse it, I could come up with a lot of ideas.
Yeah, I think that's certainly not something we haven't thought about. There's definitely going to be a difference in the market of what you can pay, right? What you can charge for your ADU, and not to say that it's certainly not going to be Category 1 rates.
Yeah.
We're just not going to get to that. But what can happen here is that longtime homeowners who need assistance replacing their roof or doing something else can convert that basement apartment into an actual legitimized, safe ADU that may not be up to code right now, and feel good about it and not have repercussions from their neighbors because it's not legalized, or similar thoughts like that.
yeah. We're doing it to bolster our workforce housing, but there's nothing that makes that person use it as workforce housing.
Well, it
Yeah,
can
you
be
have
used as an STR.
Given them, no, it can't be an STR, but we've given them the pathway, and then they can rent it out to whoever they want to for however much they want to.
You
It's a
could-
risk we're taking, right?
But it adds to housing.
It does, but if I need a new roof, I'm going to the highest bidder.
Right, so I mean, you could suggest, maybe another avenue here is to suggest that they are resident occupied deed restrictions.
That's the dream. But then you lose the buy-in.
I don't know about
No.
that, but, you know, you have more flexibility on the price you're gonna rent it for.
You know, there is another potential tier system. You could, just for your basic ADU that's not getting any funds from the town, require the primary resident requirement, which means somebody has to live there, you know, as their primary residence. And then have a second tier that if you're receiving funds from the town, then it has to have income requirements on the tenants, and they have to satisfy category incomes.
The primary resident requirement makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that the goal is to have actually somebody living in it, as opposed to, you know, I've designed a lot of like pool cabanas that were, you know, they were like a full apartment, but no one's ever in it. And it's just a place where when guests come, you have extra place, so, you know, it's like instead of having them run a hotel.
But I want to push back on the idea of like a mother-in-law suite is not workforce housing, but it could also be childcare offset, which is just as relevant to.
Yeah, but that's a resident, you know, so it's like, I'm talking about not necessarily workforce housing, but community building housing where someone who lives in the community is in at least one of them.
Correct.
Which is usually the small one, and the big one is where the rich guy lives or goes to.
But the rich guy, more often than not, is, you know, this is their second home, not their primary residence.
Yeah, third or fourth or.
Yes, seen it all.
Yeah. So, you know, I just think we should have a mechanism in there to ensure that somebody's actually living in it. At least one of them. And I thought we used to have that one of the, for ADUs, at least one of them had to be resident occupied.
Currently in R3TN, the deed restriction requirement is that one of the two units on the site needs to be somebody's primary residence.
Okay.
Eric is raising his hand.
Yes.
Thank you. So I just did want to provide a quick point of clarification. In cases where someone has constructed an ADU using funds provided by the town, the code does have, this language does have a kind of an enforceability mechanism where tenants must be eligible through a couple different pathways. So they're either employed within the town of Basalt or within the 3 Mile area. They're retired or disabled or previously worked within the town of Basalt or that 3 Mile area, and that there is an employment verification done on an annual basis, whereby we also just have clarifying language in here that tenant that's related to the property owner shall be subject to those same eligibility requirements. So in that particular case, it does kind of solve that loophole issue where someone got funds from the town to construct this ADU and they want their kid to live there, but that child has to meet these other requirements instead of just giving them a free place to live within the town.
That sort of answers the question. Thank you.
Yeah, but that's with town funds. I'm trying to think, I'm gonna pull something that's been used against us. Sorry, I'm gonna pull something out of my pocket that's been used against us a lot, and that would be small town character. And I found it always really annoying when people talk about that.
Don't call that exclusion of brown people, because that's wrong.
No, I'm not talking about brown
Okay,
people.
because you've done that before.
Yeah, I'm
And
not
I
talking
didn't
about,
object,
we're
and
not
I
gonna
should
mention
have.
anything about brown people. I'm talking about density. If we're increasing density, we should get something for it, meaning people living in them, as opposed to increasing density and just getting more empty houses. You know, it's important to me because I live in a subdivision that's 3/4 empty houses now. And it's like,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just think we should get something for this. And we should at least have people in some of them. My thoughts.
Is there a fee offset that is required if it is not going to be occupied? Or you're building the ADU, and if you're choosing not to occupy it and you're just taking advantage of the program, then you are required to pay into an affordable housing fee or something punitary that establishes the means up front. I don't know how you hold them to the enforcement side of it,
Yeah.
but throwing spaghetti at the wall. Um,
I guess really here, maybe just to direct our conversation a little bit, this is really helpful, by the way, so I don't want to throw that off. But maybe it's really more about the use. Are we into the use of having ADUs everywhere and having these sizes work out? Some of these mechanisms we can go back and work through a little bit. We certainly wouldn't expect you guys to figure out the implementation there, but prioritizing whether one of the residents has to be occupied full-time, or if we want to try to figure out, I think we have a clause in here that the ADU has to have a minimum 6-month lease. And that came back to us from town council. Town council said, I think we started with a year-long lease, actually, and town council said that doesn't make sense. 6 months is fair. You have ski co-workers, whoever else, 6 months is reasonable. So that is a stipulation that's in there.
I think to that end as well, I mean, you just described a potential community member who is not living in the 3 mile, or not working in the 3 mile planning area, but a part of our community.
Right.
And it feels rough to say, you know, the deed restriction is you're requiring them to be within these 3 miles.
Yeah, I think the 3 miles is too restrictive for exactly that reason, ski co-employee. I think, I may be speaking for the board, I think we're all in favor of the concept, and that we think, on the whole, most actors will be good actors and have employees or other people in the community there. Sounds like our concern is those that aren't, and how, is there a way to try to mitigate that through some language?
Because the reason I bring it up is because Aspen did this, and that's what they got.
Right.
Right, and...
That's free TDRs.
What?
Free TDRs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, but as far as the concept is concerned, I think we're all behind making this prescriptive, so it's easier to do. And the size requirements are good. I think we're all on board with that. And so really the hang-up for me, and I think it sounds like some of you guys too, is that it's who's in it.
Right. I mean, I live in Willits, and Willits by code allows ADUs. And I don't know all of them, but there's a lot of houses that have ADUs. And from what I can tell and from what I know, they're used by, you know, renting tenants who pay and are part of the community, and it's very successful, and from what I know of it. I would say every 5th, every 6th house there maybe has one, and it works really well, from what I know.
My friend that lives in Willits has one, but it's not one of the houses that's allowed to have one. They made him empty it out, right? And that's exactly what we're trying to get here back into the housing pool.
And I know people recently retired in their 60s that are figuring out ways to bring in more cash flow, and that have done this in the region, have added, you know, improved their basement and built another entrance and that sort of thing to make it, to help to make ends meet in this very high cost of living environment. So we're all for it, absolutely.
Great.
Okay, what's our end product here? We want a
Public comments?
public comments. Well, I should open this up for public comment, even though nobody's here, at 8:11. Anyone online? No. So let's close public comment at 8:11. And we've had our discussion. A motion to do what?
You would be making a motion to recommend approval to town council. You could include in your motion with a condition to pursue, to emphasize occupancy, 6-month or longer occupancy.
Encourage.
Who would like to make that who would like to make a motion to that end?
You're welcome
Rob,
to say so.
I will move that as written with the provision that we do something to encourage that those units be used.
Language be inserted for council, for the planning department to look into language which would encourage the use of and occupancy by community members.
There you go. Okay, we have a first. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have first, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, that motion passed. What do we have now? Commissioner comments and staff updates. Staff updates.
I happened to be at the CAST, Colorado Association of Ski Town meeting conference last week. And actually ADUs are a DOLA program right now across the state. Basalt won't qualify because we're too small of a district, but there's state funds to promote exactly this conversation that we're having in bigger areas. So we're not alone here. Salida has adopted a comprehensive ADU code amendment. So they're basically allowed everywhere, at any size, no income restrictions, no deed restrictions. You just cannot use them for STRs. So they have had a, I think a 25% increase in ADUs in their town, which is pretty exciting. Salida. It's a totally different animal. Their building is different there, all of the things, but it's been successful for them, so.
Salida has a tremendous influx of micro housing too, which I think is really interesting.
3D printed housing. There's
Is it
a
really?
neighborhood. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
It's pretty neat.
We're on a road trip.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Definitely worth it.
The town's changed a lot in the last 10 years.
An annexation, 6 annexations a year in the last 5 years.
Yikes.
Basalt news, what do we have today?
Next meeting will be February 17th, when you'll have 555 Basalt Avenue, and some other code amendment review, and potentially 72 Sunset, depending on whether it gets figured out.
I move to continue it.
Just because.
Yeah, other code amendment stuff.
I think that's all for now.
All right. Any comments from any of us here? No, I don't see any faces looking like comments. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
The first, any seconds?
Second.
First, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
We did the over-under, Michelle.